I was standing in my bedroom doorway at 11:47 p.m., frozen like someone had dumped ice water down my back. My suitcase lay open on the bed, half packed with clothes for my Atlanta trip. But I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. Because my 10-year-old son, Kamari, had just whispered words that made my whole world tilt sideways. Daddy has a lover, and when you travel, they are going to take your money and house. Let me back up 3 days, so you understand how I got here. 3 days ago, I was on top of the world. I had just landed the biggest contract of my career, planning a celebrity wedding in Atlanta worth $250,000. This wasn't just money. This was validation. This was proof that little Ziana Phillips from the rough side of town had built something real, something that mattered. I remember spinning around my office, calling my sister Octavia, my voice high with excitement. I did it! I actually did it! She screamed right back at me through the phone, proud as always. When I told Rashawn that evening, he pulled me into his arms and kissed my forehead. That's my girl. I always knew you'd make it big. His smile was warm. Perfect. The same smile that made me fall in love with him 12 years ago. I'll need to be in Atlanta for 5 days, I told him. The wedding is massive, multiple events. Can you handle everything here with Kamari? Baby, please. We'll be fine. We're men. We'll eat pizza and play video games and have the time of our lives. He winked at Kamari, who was doing homework at the kitchen table. Right, little man? Kamari looked up at us and smiled. But I noticed it didn't quite reach his eyes. I figured he was just upset about me traveling again. He'd always hated when I went away for work. The next 2 days were a blur of preparation. Conference calls with the bride, coordinating with vendors, booking flights, packing samples of decoration ideas. Rashawn was supportive like always, bringing me coffee while I worked late, rubbing my shoulders when I got tense. I was so focused on Atlanta that I didn't notice the little things. Things I should have seen. Like how Rashawn's phone kept buzzing with texts at weird hours. Just Valencia with questions about properties, he'd say, barely looking up. Valencia was his assistant at the real estate office. I'd met her a few times. Beautiful woman. Always dressed sharp. Always smiling at Rashawn just a little too long. But I trusted my husband. We'd been together for 12 years, married for 10. We had a son, a home, a life. Or like how I found a credit card statement with charges I didn't recognize. Expensive dinners at restaurants Rashawn and I never went to. A hotel charge downtown. When I asked him about it, he laughed it off. Client meetings, babe. You know how it is. Sometimes you have to wine and dine people to close deals. It made sense. His real estate business had been doing well. Why would I question it? Or like how Rashawn suddenly got really interested in my business last year. We should combine everything, he'd said on our 10th anniversary. Complete financial transparency. That's what strong couples do. He suggested I add him to all my business accounts, just in case of emergency. I thought it was romantic, a sign of trust, so I did it. I added him to everything. Looking back now, I was so stupid, so blind. But 3 days ago I didn't know any of this. I was just excited about Atlanta, about my future, about proving I could handle the big leagues. Kamari had been quieter than usual that week. He'd watch Rashawn with these worried eyes, follow me around the house like a shadow. But when I asked what was wrong, he'd just shake his head and say, "Nothing, Mama." The night before my flight, I was in my bedroom packing, picking out the perfect outfits for client meetings, making sure I had all my portfolios organized. My flight was at 6 a.m., so I needed to leave the house by 4:30. That's when I heard my bedroom door creak open. I turned and saw Kamari standing there in his dinosaur pajamas, the blue ones with the T-Rex on the front. His face was wet with tears, his whole body was shaking. My mama instincts kicked in immediately. I dropped the dress I was holding and rushed to him. "Baby, what's wrong? What happened?" He just stood there crying, his little chest heaving. I pulled him close, feeling his tears soak into my shirt. Kamari, talk to me. Please. You're scaring me. He pulled back and looked up at me with those big brown eyes. Eyes that looked too old for a 10-year-old. Eyes that had seen something they shouldn't have. And then he whispered it. Daddy has a lover, and when you travel, they are going to take your money and house. The words hung in the air between us. For a second, I thought I'd heard him wrong. My brain couldn't process what he'd just said. My hands shook as I gripped his shoulders. My voice came out barely above a whisper. What did you say, baby? What do you mean? Kamari's next words came out in a rush, like he'd been holding them in for so long they exploded out of him. I heard Daddy and Miss Valencia talking in the office last week. They said when you leave for Atlanta, you're never coming back to this house, because it will be theirs, Daddy said. His voice cracked and fresh tears spilled down his cheeks. Daddy said you were stupid and blind, and taking everything from you would be easy. The room spun around me. My knees went weak. The floor seemed to drop out from under my feet. My perfect life. My perfect husband. My perfect family. All of it was a lie. I couldn't breathe. The walls of my bedroom felt like they were closing in on me. My baby boy was standing in front of me, trembling and crying, and he'd just shattered everything I thought I knew about my life. I forced myself to take a deep breath, then another. Kamari needed me to be strong right now. I could fall apart later. Right now, my son needed his mother. I led him to my bed and sat down, pulling him close to me. My hands were shaking, but I kept my voice steady. Kamari, baby, I need you to tell me everything. From the beginning. Can you do that for me? He nodded against my chest, hiccuping through his tears. I'm sorry, Mama. I'm so sorry. I should have told you sooner, but I was scared. Scared of what, baby? Scared that if I told you, you and Daddy would fight, and it would be my fault. Scared that I heard wrong and I'd mess everything up. Scared that. He broke down, sobbing again. Scared that you wouldn't believe me. My heart cracked into a million pieces. My 10-year-old son had been carrying this weight alone, terrified and confused, trying to protect me while thinking he might destroy our family. I will always believe you, Kamari. Always. Now tell me what happened. He wiped his nose on his pajama sleeve and started talking. It was 2 weeks ago. Remember when I went to Marcus's house to play video games? I nodded. Marcus lived 3 blocks away. Kamari went there all the time. Well, I forgot my controller here, so Marcus's mum drove me back to get it. She waited in the car. When I came in the house, I heard voices coming from Daddy's office. The door was almost closed, but not all the way. My stomach twisted. What did you hear? I heard Daddy laughing, and I heard Miss Valencia's voice. You know, the lady who comes here sometimes for work meetings? His voice got smaller. Except it didn't sound like a work meeting, Mama. What did they say? Kamari's words tumbled out faster now, like he'd been holding them in for so long they were fighting to escape. Miss Valencia said something like, she works so hard and doesn't even notice her own husband slipping away. And then Daddy laughed and said, Zayana's so busy chasing contracts, she's blind to everything else. Each word felt like a knife in my chest. But I kept my face calm for Kamari. What else? Miss Valencia said, are you sure this will work? What if she finds out before the Atlanta trip? And Daddy said, Kamari's voice dropped to barely a whisper. Daddy said, she won't find out. I've been setting this up for months. By the time she gets back from Atlanta, the house will be in both our names, and I'll have access to everything. She signed her own empire away last year and doesn't even know it. My anniversary gift. When I'd added Rashawn to all my accounts. When I'd trusted him with everything I'd built. There's more, Mama. Kamari was crying again. I've seen Miss Valencia here 5 other times when you were working late. I didn't think anything was wrong at first because Daddy said they were working. But then what, baby? Then one night I came downstairs to get water, and I saw them in the kitchen. They were. He couldn't say it. He didn't have to. I understood. My husband. In our kitchen. With another woman. While our son watched from the stairs. And last week, Kamari continued, I saw papers on the dining room table when I came home from school early. I only looked for a second before Daddy scooped them up. But I saw our address on them. And your business name. And Miss Valencia's name too. Legal documents. They were preparing legal documents to take everything from me. Did you hear anything else? Anything about what they were planning? Kamari nodded miserably. Yesterday, when you were at that meeting downtown, Miss Valencia came over again. I was supposed to be at Grandma's, but she brought me back early because I forgot my math homework. I heard them talking in Daddy's office again. What did they say? Daddy told Miss Valencia that you're leaving tomorrow for 5 days. He said once you're gone, they can move faster. Miss Valencia laughed and said, by the time she gets back, we'll own everything. The house, the business, all of it. And there's nothing she can do about it because your name is on everything now. My vision blurred with tears, but I blinked them back. I couldn't cry yet. Not yet. Then Daddy said something about how you put him on all the business accounts last year as a gesture of trust. He laughed, Mama. He laughed and said, she signed her own empire away and doesn't even know it. Taking everything from her is going to be so easy. The man I'd loved for 12 years. The man I'd built a life with. The father of my child. He'd been plotting to destroy me. And he'd called me stupid. Blind. Easy to manipulate. I looked at my suitcase on the bed, half packed for Atlanta. The biggest contract of my career. The trip that was supposed to change everything. They were counting on me getting on that plane tomorrow morning. Counting on me being hundreds of miles away while they finalized their plan to steal everything I'd worked for. Well, I wasn't going anywhere. I kissed the top of Kamari's head and held him tight. You did the right thing telling me, baby. You are so brave. So strong. And I promise you, everything is going to be okay. But inside, my mind was already racing. I had less than 12 hours before I was supposed to leave for the airport. 12 hours to figure out how to save everything I'd built. 12 hours before Rashawn realized I knew the truth. I tucked Kamari back into bed, promising him everything would be all right. Then I went to my home office and quietly closed the door. My hands were shaking as I opened my laptop and logged into my business banking account. It was 1:30 inches the morning. The house was silent except for the pounding of my heart. The account screen loaded, and what I saw made my blood run cold. Transfers. Dozens of transfers I'd never authorized. Money disappearing from my accounts in chunks. 5,000 here. 10,000 there. Never enough at once to trigger alerts, but over time, I scrolled through 6 months of statements, my horror growing with each page. Over $180,000 was gone. Just gone. Transferred to accounts I didn't recognize. The most recent transfer was 3 days ago, the day after I'd told Rashawn about the Atlanta contract. He'd moved $45,000 to an account number I'd never seen before. My entire body went numb. This was real. This wasn't paranoia or misunderstanding. My husband had been systematically robbing me for months. I was staring at the screen, trying to process the scope of the betrayal, when I heard footsteps in the hallway, coming toward my office. The door handle started to turn. I barely had time to close the banking screen before the door opened, and Rashawn stood there in his pajama pants, hair messy from sleep, looking at me with those eyes that used to make me feel safe. Baby? His voice was soft, concerned. Why are you still awake? You have an early flight tomorrow. My heart was hammering so hard I was sure Rashawn could hear it. But I forced my face into a smile. The performance of my life was about to begin. I know, I said, letting out a fake little laugh. I just couldn't sleep. You know how I get before big trips. My brain won't shut off. Rashawn walked into the office and wrapped his arms around me from behind. His touch made my skin crawl. Every instinct screamed at me to pull away, to scream at him, to demand answers. But I couldn't. Not yet. You're going to do amazing in Atlanta, he murmured against my hair. This contract is going to change everything for you. For me. Not for us. For me. Like he was already separating himself from my success, because soon it wouldn't be mine anymore. I leaned back into his embrace, playing the role of trusting wife. I'm just nervous. What if something goes wrong? Nothing's going to go wrong. You're the best event planner in this city. That celebrity bride is lucky to have you. He kissed the top of my head. Now come to bed. You need rest. I let him lead me back to our bedroom. I lay down next to the man who'd vowed to love and cherish me, the man who was planning to rob me blind. He fell asleep within minutes, his breathing deep and steady. I stared at the ceiling until dawn, my mind racing with plans. When my alarm went off at 4:15 a.m., I got up and went through all the motions. Shower, makeup, the professional outfit I'd laid out. Rashawn made me coffee, kissed me goodbye, told me he loved me. I hugged Kamari extra tight before I left. Remember what we talked about, I whispered in his ear. Everything's going to be okay. He nodded against my shoulder, trying to be brave. I loaded my suitcase into my car and drove away, watching Rashawn wave from the doorway in my rearview mirror. But I didn't go to the airport. I drove straight across town to my sister Octavia's house. She opened the door in her bathrobe, eyes wide with surprise. Z? What are you doing here? Aren't you supposed to be on a plane? I need your help, I said, and then I told her everything. Octavia's face went from shock to fury in about 30 seconds. By the time I finished talking, she was pacing her living room like a caged tiger. That piece of trash. That absolute piece of garbage. She grabbed her phone. Okay. We need to move fast. You did the right thing coming to me. My sister was one of the best divorce attorneys in the city. She'd seen every dirty trick in the book, and now she was going to use all that knowledge to protect me. Within an hour, she had 3 phone calls going. A forensic accountant she'd worked with before, a private investigator who specialized in financial crimes, and her law partner who handled emergency injunctions. We have 3 days, Octavia said, her eyes sharp and focused. 3 days while Rashawn thinks you're in Atlanta and he's in the clear. We're going to use every single hour. The forensic accountant, a quiet man named Deshawn, arrived at Octavia's house with his laptop. I gave him access to all my accounts, every password, every piece of financial information I had. What he found made me physically sick. The stealing had started small, over 2 years ago, right after Rashawn met Valencia at that real estate conference. Just a few $100s here and there. Amounts I wouldn't notice. But it had grown. Especially after our anniversary last year when I'd added him to everything. He's been smart about it, Deshawn said, his fingers flying across his keyboard. Never taking enough at once to trigger fraud alerts. Spreading it across different accounts. But look here. He turned his screen toward me. See these account numbers? They all trace back to the same offshore bank. And the name on that account is Valencia Cruz, Octavia finished, reading over his shoulder. She's not just his lover, Deshawn continued. She's his partner in this whole scheme. And based on what I'm finding, she's done this before. He pulled up public records. Valencia had been involved in a lawsuit 5 years ago. A man claimed she'd helped drain his assets and disappeared. The case was settled out of court, and Valencia had moved to our city shortly after. She was a professional. This was what she did. And my husband had brought her into our lives, into our home, and let her around our son. The private investigator, a woman named Keisha, got to work next. We need evidence. Real, solid evidence that will hold up in court. Give me your house keys. I handed them over, my hands shaking. What are you going to do? Installing cameras. You own that house, right? Purchased it before you got married? I nodded. It's been mine since before I even met Rashawn. Good. That means we can legally install surveillance without his permission. If he brings Valencia over while he thinks you're gone, we'll have it all on video. Over the next 2 days, I stayed at Octavia's house while my whole world was being investigated. Keisha installed tiny cameras throughout my home, in the living room, the kitchen, my office, even my bedroom, which made me want to throw up. But I needed proof. I needed to see with my own eyes what they were doing. On day 2 of my supposed Atlanta trip, I got the call from Keisha. "You need to see this," she said quietly. "But Z, I'm warning you, it's bad." I sat in Octavia's living room and watched the surveillance footage on Keisha's laptop. Rashawn brought Valencia to our house at 10 a.m. He kissed her in the doorway. My doorway. Then they walked through my house like they already owned it. The footage showed them in my bedroom. In my bed. The bed where I'd slept next to Rashawn for 10 years. I watched Valencia try on my jewelry, laughing as she held my grandmother's necklace up to the light. "This is pretty. I wonder how much I can get for it." "Keep whatever you want," Rashawn said, pulling her close. "Once she's served with divorce papers, she'll be too busy trying to save her business to worry about jewelry." They moved to my office next. Valencia sat in my chair, at my desk, with my laptop open in front of her. "The accounts are still accessible," she said, typing. "Let's move another 30,000 before she gets back. We're so close now." Rashawn stood behind her, watching the screen. "By this time next week, all of this will be ours. The house, the business, everything. And she'll have nothing." Valencia turned and kissed him. "You're sure she won't fight back?" "Ziana?" Rashawn laughed. Actually laughed. "She's too soft, too trusting. She'll cry and call her sister, but she won't actually do anything. She never does." "Why do you think this was so easy?" The video continued. They're making plans, talking about redecorating my house, discussing which of my business clients they'd keep and which they'd drop, planning their future with my money, in my home, living my life. I watched all of it with Octavia's hand gripping mine. When it was over, I looked at my sister. "What now?" "Now we finish this," she said. Her voice was steel. "I've already filed emergency injunctions to freeze all accounts. The police are involved because this is fraud. We have enough evidence to bury them both." "When do we move?" "Tomorrow, 2 p.m. You're going to come home, but you won't be alone. You'll have police with you, me with you, and every piece of evidence we've gathered. We're going to watch their faces when their whole plan falls apart." That night, I barely slept. Tomorrow, everything would explode. Tomorrow, Rashawn and Valencia would learn that I wasn't as stupid and blind as they thought. Tomorrow, justice would start. But when I pulled up to my house the next day at exactly 2 p.m. with Octavia, her law partner, and 2 police officers, what I saw in my driveway made every plan disappear from my mind. Kamari's bicycle was lying on its side in the driveway. The front wheel was still spinning slowly, and my front door was standing wide open. Kamari was supposed to be safe at my mother's house. He wasn't supposed to be anywhere near here. I didn't wait for the police. I didn't wait for Octavia. I ran. I ran faster than I'd ever run in my life. Behind me, I heard Octavia yelling my name, and the police officers shouting for me to wait, but I couldn't stop. My baby was in that house and something was wrong. I burst through the front door and my heart stopped. The living room looked like a tornado had hit it. My business files were scattered everywhere. Papers covered the floor. The coffee table was flipped over. A lamp was shattered in the corner. And from upstairs, I heard voices. Rashawn's angry shouting, Valencia's shrill screaming, and underneath it all, the sound that made my blood turn to ice. Kamari crying. I took the stairs 3 at a time. The police were right behind me now, but I didn't care about procedure or safety. My son was up there, and he was scared. I crashed through my bedroom door, and the scene in front of me stopped my heart. Kamari was pressed against the far wall, his face wet with tears, his eyes wide with terror. Rashawn stood in the middle of the room, his face twisted with rage. Valencia was near the window, and she looked panicked in a way I'd never seen before. "Kamari!" I screamed. My son saw me and ran. He threw himself into my arms so hard we almost fell over. He was shaking, sobbing into my shoulder, his whole body trembling like a leaf. The police officers pushed past me into the room. One of them stepped between Rashawn and me. The other moved toward Valencia. "Ma'am, step back," the first officer said to me. Then to Rashawn, "Sir, I need you to stay where you are." Octavia appeared in the doorway with her phone out, already recording everything. I held Kamari tight, my hands checking him over for injuries. "Baby, are you hurt? Did they hurt you? What happened?" "I'm okay, Mama," he sobbed. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "What are you sorry for? You didn't do anything wrong." "I came home when I wasn't supposed to. Grandma didn't know. I told her I needed my tablet for a school project, and she waited in the car outside. But when I came in," his words broke off into fresh sobs. I looked over his head at Rashawn. The man I'd married. The man I'd trusted with my heart. My life. My child. He looked like a stranger. His eyes were wild. Desperate. "What did you do to my son?" My voice came out low and dangerous. "Zed, this isn't what it looks like," Rashawn started, but I cut him off. "What did you do to my son?" Kamari pulled back from my shoulder, wiping his eyes. When he spoke, his voice was stronger than I expected, like he'd been waiting to get this out. "I came in the house and found them in your office, Mama. They were on your computer trying to move more money, but the accounts weren't working right. They kept saying the accounts were frozen and they didn't understand why. Deshawn's emergency injunctions had worked. They'd tried to steal more and hit a wall. I got mad," Kamari continued. "I got so mad, Mama," I yelled at them. "I told them I'd already told you everything and that you knew what they were doing." Rashawn's face went white. "You what?" "I told her everything," Kamari shouted, his fear turning to anger. "I told her about your plan. I told her about the stealing. I told her you called her stupid." That's when it happened. Rashawn lunged forward, but the police officer grabbed his arm. "That's when Daddy grabbed me," Kamari said quietly. "He grabbed my arm really hard and asked where you were. He kept shaking me and asking what you knew and when you were coming back." I looked at Kamari's arm. There were red marks. Finger-shaped bruises already forming on my baby's skin. Something broke inside me. Something that had been holding on to the last shred of the man I thought I'd married. It shattered completely. "You put your hands on my son," I said. My voice didn't even sound like mine. "Zed, I didn't mean to. I just needed to know what you knew. The accounts are frozen and I don't understand what's happening and you put your hands on our child. He ruined everything," Valencia suddenly screamed. Everyone turned to look at her. She was falling apart. Mascara running down her face. Hands shaking. "That stupid little boy ruined everything. We were so close to having it all, and he had to go and open his big mouth. She'd just called my son stupid, in front of police officers, in front of witnesses." The officer near Valencia put his hand on his radio. "Ma'am, I need you to calm down." But Valencia was beyond calm. She was spiraling. "Do you know how long we planned this? 2 years. 2 years of playing nice, of pretending, of waiting. And it was working. It was all working until this little brat decided to play hero." "That's enough," the officer said firmly. Octavia stepped forward, her lawyer voice cutting through the chaos. "Officers! I'm attorney Octavia Bennett. I represent Miss Phillips. We have extensive evidence of fraud, embezzlement, and identity theft committed by both of these individuals." She pulled out a folder thick with documents. Bank records. The surveillance footage on a flash drive. Everything we'd gathered over the past 3 days. "We also have video evidence of Mr. Phillips and Miss Cruz discussing their scheme to defraud my client, including plans to forge documents and drain her business accounts." Rashawn's face went from angry to panicked. "That's not legal. You can't record people without their permission." "Actually," Octavia said with a cold smile, In a home that my client solely owns, and that she purchased before your marriage, she absolutely can. Every camera was legally installed. Every recording is admissible. The lead officer took the folder from Octavia and started flipping through it. His eyebrows went up as he read. He showed something to his partner, who nodded grimly. Mr. Phillips, Miss Cruz, we're going to need you both to come with us for questioning regarding financial crimes. This is insane, Rashawn shouted. I'm her husband! We share everything! You can't arrest me for accessing my own wife's accounts! Actually, Octavia said, every account you accessed was a business account owned solely by Miss Phillips. You had limited authorization for emergency purposes only. Transferring over $200,000 to offshore accounts in Miss Cruz's name doesn't qualify as an emergency. $200,000. Hearing the total amount out loud made me dizzy. Valencia made a run for the door, but the second officer blocked her path. Ma'am, don't make this harder than it has to be. This is all his fault, Valencia screamed, pointing at Rashawn. He came to me. He planned everything. I was just helping him. Are you kidding me? Rashawn yelled back. This was your idea. You're the one who said we could take everything. They were turning on each other. The perfect criminal partnership falling apart right in front of us. The officers pulled out handcuffs. As they read Rashawn and Valencia their rights, Rashawn's eyes found mine one last time. He tried to put on that charming smile, the one that used to make my heart flutter. Baby, this is all a misunderstanding. Think about Kamari. Think about our family. Don't do this. We can work through this. I love you. I looked at the man who'd shared my bed for 10 years, who'd promised to love and cherish me, who'd called me stupid and blind, who'd stolen from me, who'd put his hands on our son. I opened my mouth to respond when suddenly Kamari reached into his pocket. His small hand pulled out something I didn't expect. A small digital recorder, the kind kids use for school projects. Mama, he said quietly. I recorded them. That day I heard them planning. I didn't know what to do with it, but I kept it just in case. My heart swelled with pride and broke with sadness at the same time. My 10-year-old baby had been gathering evidence. The lead officer's eyes lit up. Son, can I see that? Kamari handed it over. The officer pressed play. Rashawn and Valencia's voices filled my bedroom, crystal clear. Better quality than I expected from a kid's recorder. Valencia's voice. The accounts are all set up. Once she leaves for Atlanta, we move fast. Rashawn's voice. And you're sure about the timeline? Valencia. Positive. I've already got the divorce papers drafted. We'll serve her the day she gets back. By then, we'll have moved enough money that she won't be able to fight us. She'll be broke and broken. The recording continued with them discussing forging documents, transferring assets, everything we already knew. But then the conversation took a turn that made even the police officers' faces change. Valencia's voice turned cold. And if she fights back or figures it out before we're ready, we can always make it look like she had a breakdown. I know someone who can forge medical records, psychiatric evaluations. We'll paint her as unstable, unfit. No court would give custody to a mentally unstable mother. The room went completely silent except for the recording. Rashawn's uncomfortable laugh came through the speaker. That's pretty extreme, V. I don't know if we need to go that far. Valencia's response chilled everyone in the room. It's just insurance, baby. A backup plan. I've done this before, remember? The last guy I helped with this, his wife tried to fight back. She ended up in a psychiatric facility for 6 months. By the time she got out, everything was gone, and she looked so crazy, nobody believed her story. The recording kept playing. Valencia's voice continued, cold and calculated. Trust me, baby. When you're taking everything from someone, you need a plan for every scenario. Women like Zayana think they're so strong, so independent, but they all break the same way. Question their sanity, make them look unstable, and nobody believes anything they say after that. Rashawn's voice. What about the kid? My whole body went rigid. They talked about Kamari. Valencia laughed on the recording. The kid's easy. He's young enough that we can say she neglects him for her career. We document every business trip, every late night at the office. We build a case that she's an absent mother who cares more about money than her own son. Then we get custody. And with custody comes more leverage for the house and the business. You were going to take my son, I whispered. The words barely made it out of my throat. The officer stopped the recording and immediately handed it to his partner. We need to get this to the station. Now. He turned to Rashawn and Valencia with a look of disgust. You have the right to remain silent. Valencia started screaming. That recording is fake. That child made it up. You can't use that. Audio forensics will verify its authenticity, Octavia said calmly. The metadata will show exactly when and where it was recorded. But please, keep talking. Everything you say right now is just more evidence. Rashawn's lawyer mask cracked completely. He pointed at Valencia, his voice desperate. I never agreed to any psychiatric facility plan. She's insane. This was supposed to be a simple divorce and asset split. I didn't know she was going to talk about institutionalizing people. Oh, now you want to play innocent? Valencia shrieked. You are happy to take the money. You are happy to plan stealing her business. Don't act like you're better than me. The officers had heard enough. They separated them, cuffing them both while they screamed accusations at each other. Their perfect criminal partnership destroyed by greed and fear. As they were being led out, Rashawn tried one more time. Zayana, please. I'm Kamari's father. Think about what this will do to him. I held my son closer. You should have thought about that before you put your hands on him, before you planned to have me declared insane, before you called me stupid and blind. His face crumpled, the reality of what he'd lost finally hitting him. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. No, you're not, I said quietly. You're sorry you got caught. They took him away. Took them both away. And I stood in my bedroom holding my son, while the police officers asked if we needed medical attention or victim services. The next weeks were a nightmare of legal proceedings, but Octavia guided me through all of it. The evidence was overwhelming. The bank records, the surveillance footage, Kamari's recording, all of it painted a clear picture of conspiracy, fraud, and theft. Valencia broke first. Faced with the possibility of 20 years in prison, she took a plea deal. She testified against Rashawn, revealing every detail of their plan. How they'd met at a real estate conference 2 years ago. How she'd done this before to another man. How she'd taught Rashawn exactly how to slowly drain my accounts without triggering alerts. In exchange for her testimony, Valencia got 8 years in prison. Rashawn refused to accept responsibility. He actually went to trial, convinced he could charm a jury the way he'd charmed me for 12 years. The jury took 3 hours to convict him on every single count. Fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy, identity theft. The judge gave him 12 years. My forensic accountant tracked down almost all the stolen money. Some was in offshore accounts under Valencia's name. Some was in accounts Rashawn had set up planning to access after our divorce. We recovered $195,000 of the $210,000 they'd stolen. The house stayed completely mine. The forged documents they'd prepared were worthless. My business stayed mine. Everything I'd built remained intact. But the real damage wasn't financial. I enrolled Kamari in therapy immediately. He needed help processing what he'd witnessed, what he'd carried alone for weeks, and the violence he'd experienced from his own father. His therapist, Dr. Simmons, was amazing. She helped Kamari understand that protecting me was never his job, that he was brave for speaking up, but children should never have to carry adult secrets. Kamari struggled with guilt at first. I broke up our family, Mama. No, baby, I told him over and over. You didn't break anything. You exposed something that was already broken. You saved us. Slowly, with Dr. Simmons's help, he started to believe it. I went to therapy too. I had to work through the betrayal, the violation of trust, the realization that I'd shared my life with someone who'd seen me as nothing more than a target. My therapist helped me see the red flags I'd ignored. The way Rashawn had slowly isolated me by always being supportive of my work trips that kept me away. The way he'd encouraged me to work more, to chase bigger contracts, so I'd be too busy to notice what he was doing. I'd wanted so badly to believe in the perfect family that I'd ignored my own instincts. But I was learning, growing, becoming stronger. My business actually grew after everything went public. A journalist wrote a feature article about financial abuse in marriages. My story resonated with people. Clients wanted to support me. They admired the strength it took to fight back. I hired a proper business manager and a financial attorney to review everything. I put protections in place, so I'd never be vulnerable like that again. 6 months after Rashawn and Valencia were sentenced, Kamari and I had created a new normal. We redecorated the house together, making it feel like ours instead of a place haunted by betrayal. We painted his room his favorite color, bright blue. We turned Rashawn's old office into a reading nook, with beanbags and shelves full of books. We created new traditions. Saturday morning pancakes became our special time. We'd cook together, make a mess, laugh until our stomachs hurt. Kamari started speaking at youth groups about the importance of telling trusted adults when something feels wrong. His bravery inspired other kids to speak up about their own difficult situations. I started working with Octavia on a project to help women recognize and escape financial abuse. We created resources, hosted workshops, helped women protect themselves before it was too late. On a sunny Saturday morning, almost a year after everything fell apart, Kamari and I were in our kitchen making pancakes. He had flour on his nose and syrup on his fingers, laughing as he tried to flip a pancake and nearly dropped it on the floor. My phone buzzed. The Atlanta client I'd had to cancel on was asking if I could plan their anniversary party. They'd followed my story and wanted to support my business. I confirmed the booking, smiling. Kamari looked up at me with those big brown eyes. "Are you happy, Mama?" I looked around our sunny kitchen. At my brave, beautiful son. At the life we'd rebuilt on a foundation of truth instead of lies. At the women I was helping through my advocacy work. At my business. Stronger than ever. With proper protections in place. I thought about everything we'd lost. But also, everything we'd gained. "You know what, baby?" I pulled him into a hug, not caring about the flour and syrup getting all over both of us. "I really am. We lost some things, but we gained something more important." "What's that?" "Skylar, we gained the truth. And ourselves. And we learned that we're stronger than we ever knew we could be. You, especially. You saved us, Kamari. You were so brave." Kamari's smile was pure sunshine. "We saved each other, Mama. And that was exactly right. I never remarried. I focused on raising Kamari and building my business with smart protections and real trust. Kamari grew up understanding that speaking the truth, even when it's scary, is always the right choice. The whisper that almost came too late became the wake-up call that saved everything that mattered. Sometimes your whole world has to fall apart so you can rebuild it into something real, something honest, something strong. I thought I had the perfect life, perfect husband, perfect family, perfect everything. But I'd been living in a beautiful lie. Now I had something better. I had the truth. I had my son. I had my strength. I had my dignity. And I had a future built on solid ground instead of sand. Rashawn had called me stupid and blind. But in the end, I'd seen everything clearly. I'd fought back. I'd won. And every morning when I woke up in my house, in my bed, in the life I'd built and protected, I remembered that I was never as weak as he thought I was. I was a mother, a businesswoman, a survivor, a fighter, and nobody would ever take that away from me again.